appropriate to discuss the game in that way.
Yeah, like I think that like I mean, okay, so one of the really positive things about this game is I think that it's like a really for being as sort of sparse as it is, it's like a very attractive game. That's like actually the reason that I think I first downloaded it was I was just like my friend Nay might have been the person who like showed it to me, but like the appearance of it is so like cool to me, especially for a text game. Like it could have easily just been like a Twine game. Um, and I think one of the things that that appearance does has to do with like what you were just saying, the sort of like non-prescriptive approach to like reality or ideas that it has. Like, so one thing that I mentioned was cycles, but another thing is like the fact that you zoom in and out and everything looks the way that it does makes it feel simultaneously like you're in outer space and on atoms.
Mm.
That you're like that like the macro is also the micro or something. Like the game is often um, doing stuff like that where it never says anything directly about that, but it can get into your mind or whatever because of um, a kind of like oh, it's almost like how poetry works, like a sort of like lyric approach to game design where it's like the fewest amount of gestures to like maximize the affect of the thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I picked up on that too. It's it's kind of like, yeah, minimalist in its statement. I hesitate to say that because there's such strong aesthetic associations with minimalism. But yeah, lyric might be the word.
And the way
Yeah.
that it's written as well, like so, these
Hmm.
like little short snippets.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like very careful not to prescribe. It's like what you're saying, it just kind of presents. And the fragmented ways in which the explore works contribute to that. It's kind of like you, the character, are going through different places, different moments. You're getting snippets of everything. And for the player, that's a bunch of like, I almost want to say fluff to work with, but not fluff in like a degrading sense. It's nothing but fluff, but it's like, it feels like light and like palpable. Like there's things you can do to arrange it and make meaning. I'm also noticing every time I actually didn't notice this before, but every time I hit explore, time is passing. And I know that because the planets are changing relative positions. That's not.
I
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Yeah, let's see. So this is Venus is almost vertical. Mercury is passive. I hit explore. The habitat is partially surrounded by a thermal shield, stabilized by the sail clusters. Oh, maybe it's not true. I thought it was. Okay, maybe I'm just confused. I suppose I'm confused.
There are things that do move though, especially when you zoom in.
No, yeah, I think it did move because Venus was just shy of being vertically above. I think it's no, I think it's actually moving right now. Yeah, Venus is rotating compared to the white dot.
Oh yeah, there it's just very slow.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
that's
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happens when you pause too. Like I guess they
Yeah.
stop moving.
And here we were being like, the pause doesn't do anything. Why did they add it? They're
It still
ridiculous.
sort of doesn't do anything because it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Like potentially,
Potentially,
I
yeah.
don't know if it matters. Actually, also look at Jupiter. If
Yeah.
when you zoom out, Jupiter is in the there's like a zone that is crossed out, and Jupiter's in that zone.
Hmm.
Does that mean that you can't go to like you can never go to Jupiter?
That's a good question because I felt like I was so close to Jupiter.
Like I don't even know if those like cross lines mean anything.
Right.
They feel like they do, but they also, especially because of how minimalist the game is, but also maybe that's not what they mean.
Hmm. Hmm.
So one of the other things about Explorer that so one of the things that kept happening to me was, as you mentioned, kind of nothing can happen unless you hit Explorer. And
Hmm.
unlike in some games, if you were to hit what is the equivalent of Explorer more than once, it would just repeat the last thing that it said, even if there's more things possible to be said, or it wouldn't let you hit it twice to begin with. So I'm pretty sure that like 80 Days, which is a game that's similar to this game in a lot of ways, just won't let you explore a city more than once unless you leave and come back. Um, but in this game, because it lets you do that, it means that like I feel like that kind of works against the like meditative and slow nature of the game because I'm just like spamming that
Mm.
until something happens, essentially. Like, because things can happen. So like if things couldn't happen, I would be like, oh, I'm just supposed to like read these and sort of luxuriate in the descriptions and just sort of explore. Um, but there's like I have an empty mission. Like if you click on missions, it'll tell you like you have no missions. So I'm like just trying to fill that so that I have like a goal. And so I'm just like spamming explore, hoping that I get a mission. I,
Yeah. Yeah, I actually read a review. I think it was Rock Paper Shotgun. Um and the reviewer was saying that once the explorers started getting repetitive, they stopped wanting to hit them because it made the world seem smaller.
hmm,
And I was wondering if, like, yeah, oftentimes in other games, like maybe more classic RPG, you'll talk to someone, they'll give you a quest, you'll go do the quest. But in the meanwhile, you can't talk to them. Like they won't really say much, or they'll say something really dismissive or short, so you know that you should go out and do the quest. That's actually something I have to do right now for one of my side projects, a mailman game. I have to write all the like idle dialogue for the
hmm,
NPCs when you can't talk to them. And that's like a very clear marker of like, hey, I'm not going to be interesting. Go do other things. That'll be interesting to you. Whereas I think something that this game is trying to create is this sense that the world is very full, that it has had a long history. They often reference like a war. Um, and so I wonder if maybe they explicitly didn't want to indicate that there wasn't more to see, but this reviewer kind of found the opposite. Like they were so afraid of breaking the illusion that there was more to see. They're so afraid of breaking that illusion that they just didn't want to engage in that mechanic with no having the fear that it would be broken.
hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think so. That makes me think about another thing or another set of things. Like if we like think about the way that the writing is structured. Um, Another thing that happens that is sort of related to that, I feel like, is um, it's sort of like a very pulled back. way of like writing style. So like occasionally the writing involves your like embodied avatar or whatever interacting with things directly, but that's pretty rare. And when that happens, it is it's like very generalized. So I feel like that all sounds like nonsense. So I'll try to give an example. Like when your character, I remember one time my character like um, met a group of people and asked them questions essentially, and the way that that was described was that all the people sort of look the same and they don't respond to your questions, which is like a very generalized way of describing um, that interaction. Like I don't have a sense of their personalities or my personality, right? Like it's just sort of like a an abstracted or slightly abstracted description of an interaction, and then all the rest of the interactions are you like watching something from afar, and so your body is not even present at all. It'll be like um, you see a moon setting against the horizon or whatever, right? Like that's just like a description of a thing that doesn't even need a body. Like oftentimes narratives or narrators in a thing will say something like that to you, the person reading, and there's no one present to see it. It's just you, the reader. So, anyways, all that is to say that like that style of writing made it unclear sometimes to me because of the way it added up with the fact that you can keep spamming explore. I wasn't sure if I was getting new stuff or if the stuff um, was tied to the planet I was on. Like I didn't know if it was being randomly generated from a huge list. If like you can only get certain things if you're on Venus. Like I don't know if any of this makes sense, but like I was never sure. Unlike the reviewer who you said mentioned that like they were getting repeated things and that made the world seem small. I felt like sometimes the world felt small because I couldn't tell if the things I was reading even applied to the world I was on,
Hmm.
or if they were like being randomly generated or taken from a large list. Um, and therefore, like it didn't matter if I was on Earth or Venus or Eros or whatever. Like they were just like these interactions that could happen no matter where you were.
Yeah. Yeah. To speak to your first point about the writing style, even here, this blurb is saying a surgeon on the orbital specializes in solar based sleeve modifications. You browse the selection and watch some corona insulation become torched inside a sealed chamber. And then I have this choice on the right for corona insulation, solar skin, or temperature regulation. This is a point where I'm making a choice to add one of these modifications because I'm assuming because it says surgeon and sleeve modifications. And you could easily see another game really focus on agency being like, you can add these to your body. What do you choose? But like you said, it's really focusing on the surgeon. It's focusing on the chamber. It's very detached um, from the, I guess, player, character, agent embodied aspect.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
no, no, you go ahead.
I think I think it also like because it's doing that. It also means that you have even less context than, or you just have less context than you would in another game. So like it means that like this choice that you're making, like as you were describing it, clear um, that you don't know, and I also don't know like what exactly like we're guessing what will happen from those choices, which is like very different than most choices are in games, as you were saying. Like, not only are they normally about your character and their decision making, but also you tend to know what the choices will literally do. You're like agreeing with someone or disagreeing, or you're buying an item on purpose. Um, and here you're like, it's like maybe not. There's fairly good reason to believe that you're choosing one of these things to be installed onto you, but you don't know what solar skin means. For instance, like you don't
Yeah.
know what the benefit of that is. You don't know what it looks like. Only because if you've been playing this game long enough to realize that there is no like money or trade. Do you know that it's not going to cost you anything? But like, if this is the first encounter you've ever had, you're like, "Am I buying this?"
Hmm.
All of that is sort of like a mystery because of the way that it's written and it's sort of like pulled back, non um, character focused way, as if you're like watching. It's almost like out of body,
Yeah.
or something that you're like watching. It is you that you're watching, but you're out of your own body watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I have a lot of thoughts. So I'm thinking about another game that's widely regarded as like narrative, choice based. Space, Mass Effect. So yeah, I think it's funny because yeah, like you said, you're not even getting things on purpose. You're just hitting explore and seeing what happens. And so sometimes these things are thrust upon you. That kind of reminds me of the paragraphs you read from the developer, which are like sometimes things just happen. Um, it also is. I think there's a contrast that can be made here between this game and Mass Effect, where like that's a game where you have these choices, you run around, you shoot things. You have your moral choices, you have your action scenes, and there's a very clear competency you have as a person who runs around and shoots things. And so it's like there's a certain confidence you can have as a player playing the game that like, oh, I'm probably reasonably equipped to shoot things. If not, I'll buy some things and I'll go shoot some more things. Whereas here, you don't always have that measure of control. And I wouldn't say lack of confidence. I think part of the writing style being pulled back is that it feels like you can kind of experience a wide range of things without immediate direct consequences. Like a shooting game is very embodied. It's very much like you're going to make a threat upon someone else's body by being skilled or well equipped or whatever, and then they can make a threat upon your body. Whereas this, because it's detached, there's like the the threat somehow feels less most of the time. It also is describing like less directly threatening things most of the time. Um, but sometimes it can make the deaths kind of startling. And then I think I did have a moment where I was on a certain asteroid and things were getting bad, and I think I got like bruised or scraped or something. And then I was like, okay, it's time to retreat. But it is really interesting how the writing style kind of insulates you from both the sense of power and also the sense of danger.
Yeah, that is super interesting. Also, like I could talk about Mass Effect forever, and I could also talk about BioWare and choices. Like you mentioned many things that I like love thinking and talking about, but one of the things that you're describing is that Mass Effect. So not even just Mass Effect, all BioWare games, or at least all the ones that I've played, operate under a moral logic that is like central to the way that those games are built. And it's a thing that I didn't realize. I like grew up playing them. like ever since the first Baldur's Gate. Um, but then like I started playing more narrative games that don't operate with that logic, and it really uh, it just really exposes the way that the universe, so to speak, like works in BioWare or Mass Effect games. And what I mean is that like in those games, almost all choices are moral choices. Like that's the first thing. Like you're like making decisions for people or for yourself or for your teammates, and they're like there's usually like a good and evil version of that thing, and in some games it's literally good and evil, like in Baldur's Gate games. And then like the way that they modify that in later games is like Paragon versus Renegade. So you sort of learn that in that universe, since all the things that you're doing are moral questions, you know, it like gives you a better sense of what um, the decisions that you're making mean, like what it is that you're doing, even when you're like only barely involved in the situation. Like if you just barely meet someone and they're like, my child just stole from the market, and you can like step in and say what you feel about that, even though you don't know these people at all.
Mm.
Like the game has sort of like presented to you the idea that you're like a moral being who can like affect people in moral ways. And the other thing about the way that those games work is that you're always rewarded for moral choices, and you're never punished for them, or almost never punished for them. So like as long as you keep doing the thing that seems like a good thing, you will always like become a stronger person, you'll get more money, and you'll make people happy. Which also simplifies the decision making process in those games where you're like, I'm gonna keep doing I'm gonna keep butting into everyone's lives and telling them what to do, and like everyone will be better for it. And this game like just does not, Sundogs just does not do any of those things. Um, because your choice, it's like never clear what rubric or whatever the choices that you're making are being graded on, if at all. You know what I mean, like you're not sure
Hmm.
why you're making, like here, what does it matter between these two things. um there's not like a strategic choice, as far as you're told, at least in this moment, and there's not a moral choice either, and so you're just sort of either randomly choosing them or sort of just like trying to be a character, but like because the way the game is written, you like, I have no sense of what my character is.
Hmm.
So I don't personally play that way. Like I'm not like being a kind of person because I don't feel like I am a person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, am I a badass? Am I like a scientist? I don't know. I don't even try to imagine that.
Yeah.